Hey, what's going on, everybody? Hello from Washington. My name is Matt, and one of the hosts of the Essential Credentials, and this is episode 3 of the Side Credentials. I thought it would be fun to get into a little bit of hockey since it's hockey off season. We're starting to see some really cool things happening in the market. I'm going to make a fun decision with my collection, and I couldn't think of anybody better to bring on to do that with it, to talk about that with, than my buddy Doug. What's going on, Doug? Russian Rocket Collector on Instagram. Doug, it's good to have you back on here, man. It's been a while because you were on here in one of those round tables not too long ago. Well, actually, it does seem like a long time ago, but how's things going, dude?
Really good. Thanks for having me back.
You bet. It's great to get the first show in from the new place. Obviously, we still got some decorating and stuff to do, but it's great to get everything set up. And I figured it would be fun to just talk about, starting a different type of collection, I guess you could say, because as we started the Essential Credentials years ago, the primary focus was always going to be on baseball and 90s baseball inserts, because they at the time were kind of seeing a rise, and now they've, some of those sets have got to ridiculous heights. But for someone like you who knows the 90s well, that's probably old news, because you look at the basketball market and it's already, like, you look at Jordan and Kobe and some of these other guys, they far surpassed where baseball will probably ever get to. But, I feel like hockey is something that's still kind of untapped unless you are a true hockey fan, right? There's so many fantastic players and amazing designs that so many people don't know about. And I thought that we today could talk about, well, if you wanted to look at starting a collection that's basically and mostly made up of the 90s, what inserts and parallels would you chase? Because you are, if you don't mind me saying, an expert in 90s, being a Pavel Bure collector. So I thought that would be a lot of fun. I mean, just to start off, when you think of, those 90s inserts, your favorites and some of the ones that come to mind, what are some of the first things you think of? You know what I mean? Like when you think of the designs and you think of like how hard it is to grab them, how hard it is to find a copy and so forth. What kinds of things come to mind when you think about that?
90s to me, most of it was like pre-autograph cards that we could get in packs most of the time. I mean, that was the first year was what, 96, 97, I think?
The Be a Player, I think, right?
Yeah, 95, 96 with maybe that one. But for me, it was 96, 97. So, like, really what we had to go after is the best looking cards, right? So the best designs, the best foil usage, the best even photographs of the players that's unique or different. A lot of new equipment was coming on the stage too, where hockey equipment didn't look as dorky, I guess,
Right.
So like you're looking for pictures of your player in their new gear, and you're looking for different things than probably what guys are looking for today. And then we also had a different budget, right? So but yeah, I think the drive for 90s is looking for shiny things, things that just grab your attention and grab your eyesight. The autographs and the patches are amazing today, right? They're amazing, right. But the designs, to be honest, I don't know if they're as cool to some degree, So I think there's a lot of creativity in the 90s. That's kind of what you're looking for, I think.
Creativity is a great way, and ingenuity, right, are two words that I think describe that era perfectly. And that's great that you bring up the patches and the autos. I think we're conditioned as modern hockey collectors. I know me for sure with Fleury. I kind of fight this 90s pull of like looking for a really cool parallel or insert that's like a parallel of an insert as compared to like an auto or a patch. I sometimes find myself getting more excited for the non-patch, non-auto cards now, and I think it still stems from that origin and collecting in the 90s. And is it the same for you? Because I know, Bure doesn't have too many autographs and patches compared to, all these other inserts and parallels. Do you find yourself being pulled toward those a lot more still?
Yeah. I mean, I think in one of the first shows that you and I did, my best advice was, especially if you got a player that's very sought by a lot of other collectors, is don't narrow your focus too much, because you never know. You might as well grab every good deal you can. But I seem to find myself now, especially with the patch autograph cards, going out of control value-wise. I mean, I don't even want to tell you what the comps are. It makes me want to throw up. It's right. Unbelievable. But it makes it a lot more fun, though, to go after and finish off the sets that I haven't completely rounded off from the 90s. We're even talking about like $5, $10 cards here and there that you can have a lot of fun doing. So when you're not chasing those big cards, it's fun to go back and remember your childhood. You probably have a big nostalgia for Pacific because of all the different parallels. And I see you gravitated towards going after the parallels like Pacific was, right? I'm a little bit prior to Pacific when I first started. So Pacific, when it came on the scene, was like overwhelming with how many parallels. So a little bit of like what I see today is it's kind of a little overwhelming. But when you can narrow it down to 90s and you can check, set by set by set, it's a little bit more fun than pulling your hair out for 5 years looking for that numbered out of 5 parallel just to finish off your rainbow of 25 parallels. But there's other guys that are really motivated about that, and that's the whole beauty of collecting is you can pull it any direction, 1,000 different directions, however you want. But my focus is on the 90s is I love to round off these sets. I am one card away from having every Leaf card from his playing days, and I'm working a deal right now for it. It's like a $50 card. I'm just as excited about finishing off all those as if I got a patch auto today. I really am.
That's awesome, dude. Well, and what you bring up is a great point. There's ways to collect within the 90s, and we've talked about it on the Essential Credentials many times, but you're right. It's like you don't have to focus on the big dollar cards. You can get just as good looking cards for 50, for 10, for 15, for 5 that are going to, check all those boxes. And
like I'll give you an example. Can I give you an example?
Yeah, go for it.
Remember 94, 95 Pinnacle? Okay. That year, huge nostalgia because the Dufex and those team Pinnacles. Look at how beautiful, who's Gretzky on with? It's Fedorov, I think, or something. I mean, what an awesome combination card. And then you have one that has Dufex on the other side or whatever. It's fun to chase, and it's like a $20 card. You know, those are the kind of cards I think are kind of fun if you want to fill in the gaps. Or if you're on a tight budget,
Right. So the different ways to be able to collect it with the 90s is why so many people are passionate about it. Like they latch onto it once they find their niche in this era, and I know it's not readily available still. Like, I'll be out at the National, and hopefully you and I are going to be at the Burbank show. I mean, just imagine the percentage that you're still finding at throughout all the tables. It's very little. You know what I mean? But yet the cards are just as good looking, if not better looking, than anything that's put out now.
Honestly, I think the quality of even like Upper Deck, I mean, I can see a difference in some of it.
Oh yeah.
So
well, and it's tough too, because in that era you had Donruss, you had Pinnacle, you had Pacific, you had Upper Deck. Who am I forgetting here? I know I'm forgetting one other, right? There had to have been a fifth. Flair. You had Flair. So you had all 5 of those brands competing with one another design-wise and trying to come up with something that the other companies weren't doing, and you cannot replicate that anymore. I think I was talking to somebody the other day, and they were talking about just like the early 2000s Upper Deck, right? The 2003, 4 to about 2010. Okay. That was a really fun era too, because you had, you had some other companies trying to finish off some of their stuff, and then Panini came in 2012. So competition is always a good thing, and it breeds ingenuity, and there's so much of that in the 90s. And so, I was kind of looking at, well, if I want to dabble back into that era, and the baseball stuff just isn't as exciting as it used to be. It happens, right? You kind of go through different waves with your collection of excitement. I said, Doug, what cards do you think would be like a starter kit to start out a collection with? And some are higher end, some are lower end, which is great. And I thought after we get, finish this episode, some people might be able to go look and discover these cards for themselves. So I gave you a little bit of homework, and as a teacher, I appreciate you being right on top of it, having it done early, extra credit. So nice job. But before I start showing these pictures, like, what was your thought process going into putting this, I want to say list, because it's more of a photo gallery type thing. But what were your thoughts when you were putting all these cards in here?
That's it's a little bit of a complex answer that I can simplify. I think, I've collected my player now. This is 31 years and pretty actively. And when you're a kid, you have a certain budget to work with, and you have to be honest with what your budget is, so I would chase after cards that I knew I could afford. And then as I got older, now I'm 43, some of these cards that literally have taken years to even find, but I knew when they were going to be expensive, I can finally afford them. And so I think that's something important to know yourself before you take any advice from somebody else, is knowing what you can handle, and also not sacrifice other parts of your life. Like, cards are a lot of fun, and that's how they should be. They shouldn't be looked upon as something that you revolve everything around. You have to be able to have like a budget to take your girlfriend out on a date and stuff like that. And so just, play within your budget. But as you work harder or save more money, then you can dabble in the ones that are a little bit bigger. Right. I'm at a really advantageous time. I guess I planned it very, very well, that I actually had the budget to be able to afford some of the stuff that's coming on the scene. And Bury's not getting any cheaper. So, I'm glad I'm able to afford it now before it gets out of reach. So
yeah. That's a really good point to bring up, man, especially with how he just seems to be headed this direction, whereas some of the other guys have plateaued, which is good at whatever level they're at. But I do want to emphasize that before we show, these pictures that Doug is put in here. This is Pavel Bure, and he is one of the top 5, maybe top 3 most expensive players in the 90s to collect. So for those of you who are baseball fans that are going to watch this, think kind of maybe not Barry Bonds, but right underneath that, looking at like Derek Jeter. He's probably comparable to Derek Jeter when you look at like the echelon of prices and popularity.
You also have to consider he only played 12 years too. So it's almost like a Mickey Mantle type career also.
And he doesn't have any more modern cards readily available. He's not getting put in any sets, and that's because of an agreement I think he hasn't signed. He doesn't want any more cards being made. So
I don't know what the drama is behind it, but there is something.
Yeah.
So we're not getting any new Bure cards, probably, I wouldn't imagine, for quite some time. I mean, we get them in Leaf, but Leaf is the unlicensed. So
right. Interesting. Well, let's kind of go through this here. And you want me to start kind of at the top and just work my way down, right?
You can pick out whatever you want, and we can take whatever subject you want.
All right. Well, I'm going to try to go back as far as I can, because you do have quite a variety here. But let's start with a couple of basics in essence here. Okay. I think most people will know. Most people will know this one. Again, I'm kind of pushing this towards some of our baseball viewers, but Finest is a really big set that a lot of baseball fans collect, right? Especially that 93 Finest set. That was the original. Wow. So you put his bronze refractor in here. Where does this kind of fall in line as far as, like a really good, like first few cards to purchase? Why would you pick this?
I think you're going to get that probably within about $100 or just slight of that. The key is I'm a peel guy. I like the peel on. And also I like ones that don't have a lot of greening. Now this picture is terrible because it's my old camera, but that card actually has very little greening. It actually is really a good card. And then the gold refractor too that was my biggest purchase as a kid in high school. I saved $300 for that card. It's definitely not worth that now. It's one of the very few cards I lost out on. It's right next to it. Yeah.
On the left here.
Yep, there you go. So this is an awesome bang for your buck though, because you can pick one up for about $100 now. And they are super tough. Like back in the 90s, they were very, very brutally hard to find any of those gold refractors. Mm-hmm. I think the Gretzky back in the day, this is in the 90s, was selling for like $1,000, which $1,000 for a hockey card was insane.
It is.
But they were getting it back in the 90s. So I wasn't the only one that lost out on those gold refractors. But it's a great bang for your buck, and I love refractors. Who doesn't?
Heck yeah! I mean, those have been a hot topic on this podcast many times, and okay. I think refractors are shiny. People love shiny cards, especially people who are coming back into collecting the 90s who were out for a while, right? I think that's what we saw these have such a big bump during COVID as people were rediscovering, and they typically started with refractors. And here's another really popular one, right? This is an amazing set, the Bowman's Best refractors out of 400.
Right.
And I do want to emphasize almost all of these cards have ridiculously high odds to pull, right? So you're going to get 1 or 2 of these per box, and the checklist is 200 to 300 players, right? So now these are more readily available as compared to the 90s, which makes them, it helps you appreciate them, even though they might be cheaper. I guess that's the only reason I brought it up.
Well, they actually, some of the stuff, depending on the players, are getting a lot harder. So, you will see some like Yager, Gretzky, Bure. You'll see guys that will get premiums over other players, but you have, like we were talking about the 90s, like Run for the Cup, right? The 96-87 Run for the Cup set. There's all but 4 of the players are in the Hall of Fame, and those 4 players are probably on the bubble. It's like, how could you go wrong with any good star from the 90s? I mean, they're all Hall of Famers. So, beautiful cards, but that whole set is almost an entire set of Hall of Famers. They didn't know that at the time, but what an iconic reason to collect it,
Heck yeah. Well, especially if you're coming into collecting 90s hockey, and for all of you who just popped in, what Doug and I are talking about again is if you're going to start a 90s hockey collection, 90s centered hockey collection, what cards would you go for? And we're kind of jumping through high end, low end. This is on the highest end of not autoed, not patch cards, right? This is like one of the most desired insert sets ever created in the 90s, like pure insert sets, not parallel. So this Run for the Cup, if I'm correct, is out of 100, right? But how often does this card show up for sale on an auction site?
Not very often, depending on the player. I mean, the influx of, like, when you're competing with other guys that collect the same player that you do. Fleury's like that. You got a lot of guys going after Fleury. So, that makes the availability of those 100 a little bit more difficult because there's definitely not 100 in circulation.
No.
So, that card I think the last time it actually – the guy mislisted it. This was a couple months ago, and he pulled it off of eBay, and he didn't relist it. Okay. So that was the last one I saw had been listed, other than maybe 3-4 years ago. And then with the influx and the hype of the set has astronomically pushed up the prices. So,
well, and like you said, it's a 30-card set, and all but 3 of them are Hall of Famers. Is it 30 or 20?
3 or 4 of them, I think. Yeah, it's something like Koivu, Van Beesbrook, Cujo, and Jovanovski, I think.
Right, and likely all of them will be in the Hall of Fame at some point, you would think. If Curtis Joseph, for sure, I think he's a lock for the next 1 or 2 years. He's going to be in. So
all 4 of those players, like Koivu, could get in also for being a builder. I mean, with what he did for cancer and the what he went through. I mean, he won the Masterton for at least once. I know that.
Right.
No. Player too, a captain for the Canadians. I mean,
right. I think it's just going to take time for sure. So Nicholas asks, it says, awesome card. Still dream about this card. How many of these Run for the Cups of Bure have you seen out there, Doug? Let's say in the last 10 years, how many have you seen come to the open market?
Less than a handful. I would say probably less than 10 for sure.
Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, that right there, in baseball, I think most people would say, okay, well, if you're going to put like the Mount Rushmore of 90s inserts to add to a collection, if your player has them, you're going to hear 98 PMG, 96 Mirror Gold. I would say those 2 are for sure on the list. And then the rest can kind of be argued for. You've got your atomic refractors, and you've got your golden embossed refractors. You got all these cards that us hockey guys don't necessarily have, but this would fit on that Mount Rushmore of 90s inserts, just strict inserts. I think this is definitely one to put at the top if you're looking for a card like that. Great question, Nicholas. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate it. Let's come back to the top here, because there's a card. This is going to go in the sneaky. If you can find a copy of any player out there not just, like the top tier guys who are going to cost a lot. Having collected Jocelyn Tebow and making sure to keep this when I sold a chunk of the collection, this Donruss Priority parallel it's got to be one of like the top 5 best looking 90s.
Uh-oh. Did we lose?
You know what I mean? Like I don't. Oh, are we back?
Yeah, there you are. Ah, nice.
That was awesome. Anyway, so can you talk a little bit about why you put this one on the list, Doug?
Oh man, I just got this. The guy that I was telling you about that was friends with Beret and had a card shop, I bought it from him, and I bought both of them. He's got 2 in that set. They're numbered out of 100. Living in Southern California, we did not get a lot of Donruss Priority. It must have been maybe more of a Canadian distributed or something. I don't know, but this was one of the very few sets I could ever get any cards from out here at like card shows or shops. So I'd never really seen one in hand before, but I did like the design, and I just kept missing out on them. So I think that it's an iconic looking card for 90s. It's got on the front with all the foil embossed and all that in the background. It just has such a 90s feel to it. Like you're watching like a 90s like music video, from MTV with shiny colors everywhere. But I really like the design of it a lot. I think it's actually a really classy looking made card too. The die cut is very quality. The card is not that thin of a stock. It's got a little thicker feel to it. And the stamp embossing is perfect. It's really quality built cards. So I think that they're beautiful. I'm glad that you like it too.
Oh yeah, they're fantastic, and to have a set themed around the mail system per se, which is perfect for now, right? Because that's how most of us get our cards. The designs are flawless. You know what I mean? You've got the die cut, you've got the embossing, you've got beautiful foil, real clear photographs. Serial numbered inserts out of or parallels out of 100. You've got some other little inserts that are actual stamps. It's definitely one of my top 5 favorite sets, and it's a box that I would have loved to have opened before the 90s boxes were all bought up and dried out. So I've got to move on to this one. This is a set in baseball that is quite iconic too. We talk about the first game jersey cards that got into products. I think any of the people that hop onto this podcast, hop onto this channel and look for cards that are from their childhood or from an earlier time when they collected, this is a set that I think so many of us say, oh yeah, I remember Beckett talking about this set almost every issue, every month when it first came out, because they were one out of 2,500 packs, I think. I was going to say 250,000, but it's 2,500 packs.
Feels like that.
Right. Or something crazy. It could be even higher, but they were the first jersey cards to ever make it into packs. And so can you talk a little bit about what that was like when that first happened?
Yeah, one of my very first expensive cards I got in high school was a black swatch of that. And it was back in the day. We're talking about in the 90s, it was still $200 cards. So they were really difficult to find, especially pre-internet. And then once we had eBay, we saw a lot more pop up, but they're an iconic card that people think that they can get a lot of money for. So they put them up for sale. We see a lot of the same ones go up for sale, but it's hard to know unless it's like a multicolored swatch like mine on this one. We don't see a lot of the red, yellow swatches. And recently we have another gentleman that won one very similar to mine on eBay. That's also on IG that, they command quite a bit of money now too. So for a jersey card, but look at how beautiful that card is. And the other thing to keep in mind is the backing. It's a 2-piece card if anybody's not held one before. So the backing, that black background, is very paper thin. Those cards can actually fit into a 35-point case with extra room in them. They're really thin. Yeah, so they're very temperamental with bending and there's a lot of blemishes on a lot of them too, bent corners or, even like complete bent, like creasing, so it's hard to find a really clean card one. And luckily I found this one. It's got perfect corners. It's got that unbelievable centering on the patch piece, and it's that coveted red, yellow. But finding 2-color pieces of this is actually probably a little bit more fun if you're the more advanced collector.
Okay.
They're very difficult. So,
well, it was really cool that Upper Deck in 2021 they decided to bring them back as an Easter egg type release. It was really cool. They did the patch versions as well. That was
nice.
also really fun to chase. Another set that I think people will be able to relate to as baseball collectors is this the exclusives, right? The UD exclusives.
Mm-hmm.
I think those are so common nowadays in hockey, but even in baseball in the 90s, these cards out of 100 were tough. They were super tough. I believe I watched a case of baseball get ripped, and there was a Griffey in there, which was really cool to see it. And then a couple other players that were, that I honestly can't remember who they were. So I think visually you're not looking at a card that would just strike you as being expensive, but to add some of the first parallels out of 100 in the 90s, I think that's a great move, because whether you collect Pavel Bure or you collect, a player who's not even in the Hall of Fame or a player who just played for a few years, they're going to be in this set because it's so big, right? Upper Deck Series 1 and Series 2. So chasing down some of the first numbered parallels, I mean, those are really fun to go for. And obviously these don't pop up that often either, do they?
No, I'm glad you pointed it out. It is the first exclusives that Upper Deck came out with. And that set alone is very difficult because that's the first year they did the 1-of-1s also. Right. I mean, I'm still looking. That's one of the very few Upper Deck sets that I haven't been able to round out yet, but it's also a really, really difficult set. I think I'm missing 3 more quantums of those.
Okay.
From the generation next. So if anybody's got them, let me know. But
awesome.
Yeah, they're very difficult to find, but there's just a ton of parallels in that set. And those cards too are paper thin. They are they must be very sensitive to the foil, like finding the foil and all they're actually beautiful cards in a way that they're made.
Mm-hmm.
But they're very, I can see that they could be very sensitive to damage.
Especially in these corners here, right? Because it's so thin and the foil can come off the front and the back as well.
Yeah.
You'll see some Pacific is well known for their paper stock kind of coming.
Yeah, it's actually
on the corners.
very much like a Pacific stock.
Right.
Very much.
Very cool. Well, as I have to show this one, I think this is probably if I was going to make a top 10 list of 90s inserts, when I first got back into hockey and I was collecting Jocelyn Thibault, I was kind of going through some different videos, and there's a person named Carlos that's on YouTube. I think a lot of people know him. He's a Madonna collector. I was going through some of his videos and just looking at cards that he was really talking highly of, and this was one that he talked about. Now, obviously, collecting Jocelyn Thibault, he's not going to be in this set, but it was a set that I just said, you know what? This is just Upper Deck at its finest, right? And then fast forward like 2 months later, I got on Instagram, I posted some Barassos, then went to Thibault. Well, Jimmy, who we've had on here before at Cardboard Adventures, I think most people know Jimmy. He opened a few packs of this. Didn't he pull a Bure out of one of his packs? I feel like he did, live on camera. It was crazy. So, yeah, it was pretty spectacular. But what made you, I mean, when you have this card, obviously, but like when you put this on your list, is this one of those cards that when you pull it out, you could just sit and stare at it for at least 2 or 3 minutes? Because I feel like there's levels of appreciation here with this one.
Yeah. Honestly, I just finished. That was the last card I needed to round out all of the 97, 98 Upper Deck set. And that whole set is one of my favorites. Those cards are so pretty. They're shiny. They're very 90s. There's foil etching on one of them. There's layered card for the other, and 2 separate, kind of like the 96, 97 jersey. And then you have these, but it's an extremely classy looking card. They have a very silvery look to them. It's a great set. I actually have a picture of the full set right next to it, to the right of it, if you see it, Matt.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah, hit that one. That's all of them right there. And it looks like I have 2 Sixth Sense Wizards. The other one on the very right is a no numbered backdoor.
Okay.
I've had that one for a long time, and I've been trying to find the one that was the stamp version. I just got it finally. But The game dated foil is up on the top there, along with you got them in the middle. You got the specialist level 2, and that's a double layered card, also numbered to 100. They're just awesome. I love that set.
Very nice.
Hopefully it wasn't overly, well, I shouldn't say that. It was really hard to finish off, but there's only 9 cards.
Right, which that doesn't sound like much, but when you're talking about the 90s, only 9 cards, that's pretty significant. I have to show this one too, because a lot of people on this channel, by the way, welcome to the show, Hockey Guy 2006. Thanks for tuning in and sharing your feedback there. SPX is SPX Finite, huge set in 98, huge, a little bit not as big in 99 baseball, but they created some beautiful cards, and this is a Spectrum. What set exactly is this? Because the way the baseball set was made, there was various tiers, right? And the bases were numbered. I think they did it similar for hockey, but I think they called them something different. So which one is this right here?
This is the hardest one to get out of it. It's numbered to 25, serial number on the back. It's the Marquee Performers, the Spectrum. And it is also a dual layered card too, because on the front you can see it looks like it's embossed, but it's actually cardboard on top of cardboard before they put the foil print on. But what's really cool is they matched up really nice. The quality card, the built quality of the card is awesome. I mean, they are so quality beautiful. And I remember when these packs came out, they were not cheap. It was really hard to afford back then, and they were extremely hard to pull, the Marquee Performers.
Right. Well, that's that right there. I mean, I think this card speaks for itself. Out of all the cards you've shown, this is right up there with this one right here, the Donruss Priority stamp of approval. I mean, it's just so gorgeous. And
90s, aren't they?
Like this, if I didn't know what era it came from, as soon as I saw it, I would know exactly where. Like if I didn't know anything other than that 90s were really shiny, this would easily stand out.
I love the shininess. It's so cool.
So, when you're thinking about 90s too, there's always going to be some like secret sneaky cards, you know what I mean? And if I remember correctly, unless I'm going crazy here, it does this kind of fall in that category of sneaky, right? Because there was some unnumbered fun cards, just like they do now, that Upper Deck would do back then. They would just put some cards in there that didn't really look too different from what you would find, but they were significantly harder to track down a copy of. So to talk a little bit about this card.
You did your homework. Yes, this card is very, very difficult to find. I finally got it this year. One literally just sold on eBay a couple days ago, I think. And it was the first one I had seen listed in a very long time too. This was a card I got on a private deal. And it is like what we would probably consider a ghost card. They only pop up every few years.
Okay.
And it's not like it will break the bank completely for such a rare card, but maybe one day they'll figure it out. But Black Diamond, just like they did the very first year, 96, 97, with the gold, the triple diamond golds.
Okay.
They didn't serial number those, but we knew that those triple diamonds were numbered to 50 or printed to 50.
Okay.
So these are the same. These are numbered out of 50, or they're not serial numbered, but they're print run of 50.
Okay.
Well, that was the last card I had needed for that complete set too. Even the horizontal quad was even easier to find than this one.
Wow.
So it's one of those, sneaky little, you don't really know because there's no serial number on it. But if it had a serial number on it back in that year, number to 50 was super difficult to find.
Oh, absolutely. This falls right in line with some of those crazy Pacific cards that people had no idea about, and they end up in dollar boxes nowadays, and people are going through and your heart jumps a beat when you see this can't be the quad diamond. Like this can't, and it's like, here's a Wayne Gretzky or a Steve Yzerman quad diamond just sitting in a $5 box. Like, how is this possible? But Grand Finale, I think, is another one that goes in there. A lot of baseball collectors know all about SPX Grand Finale from 98. I think, you just see an unnumbered card and they think, oh, it's just the gold foil. And then it's so bad that you see graded copies of the golds labeled as Grand Finales and vice versa. And you're like, dude, come on. Like, you can tell but it wasn't labeled back then. So for me, I find it to be more exciting because there's the potential for, a sweet deal to happen, or you to find it hidden in a haystack somewhere, big dollar box or something, right? So,
well, let me give you another story, because I actually thought I got one of these years ago.
okay.
I listed it and he put a wrong picture on it. He sent me the single diamond one and he charged me like $50 for it.
Oh no.
So I had to contact, him saying, "Hey dude, like, come on, like that was total bait and switch. Like you can see in the picture, I would have thought it was the quad. $50 is an amazing deal for the card, but it was still a buy it now." Well, the guy was a total jerk about it. There's a lot of people that take these cards that are rare like this, that you can easily find a way to, like the grand finales, like you mentioned, put like maybe they even put like something gold that reflects off of it, off the picture. They can make it look like a grand finale,
Right.
So, but that also puts a little bit more to the allure of when you actually physically get the card, the right one in hand.
Right.
It makes it worth way more, because there's so many people trying to copycat and rip you off for them because they're so difficult to find.
You got to do your homework. That's the lesson here. I mean, on all these unnumbered cards, you've got to do your homework. And I mean, lucky for anybody that's trying to get into 90s hockey or 90s baseball, 90s football, 90s basketball, there are so many wonderful, kind people out there that would be more than happy to help. I mean, Doug's been a huge help for me. And the player that I've decided to chase some cards of, and you have to do your research, because it's inevitable that you're going to run into, this deal looks too good to be true, and 98% of the time it is. And it's just somebody trying to swim to you. So great point that you brought up there. Let's keep working our way through here. This is another Black Diamond card. Obviously, when you think of 90s, die cut is something that always comes to mind, right? Like obviously we see some of these redone nowadays and I love it. But, Black Diamond seems to have a lot of these hidden gems per se, where you have these cards that are pretty rare. Black Diamond's not going to be in the upper echelon of these 90s insert sets or parallels, but it kind of falls right below, and so I think like some people, from what I've seen, still really like him if you're a passionate player collector. What's going on with this card, and what makes it so tricky to track down?
Like it's cool that you mentioned that, because not to give you a recorrection, it's more or less a history education.
Mm-hmm.
Because Black Diamond nowadays is more, I think we all kind of know it as a little cheaper of a product compared to other Upper Deck.
Yeah.
Back in the day, though, Black Diamond was a higher end product.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah. So this prior to the autographs on the card, the sticker autographs and stuff like that.
Right.
But yeah, it was a little bit more of a higher end product. So this one's actually kind of cool. This is the final cut from 99 2000, I think.
Okay.
But anyways, I forgot. I think I forgot to put the back on it. But the serial number is number 10 of 100, so it's his jersey number.
Oh, nice. That's even better, man. I mean. Yeah. And I just want to point this out. I don't want to go too deep into this. Hockey collectors are obsessed with that, and I'm cool with it. But I'm not going to pay 3 times more for a Marc-Andre Fleury that's number 29 out of whatever. I could care less, especially if it's like out of 50 or less. I just want a copy of the card, man. Like
a lot of times it's just because I got lucky. It was
right.
The card was available, and it was actually a good deal. So right. I rarely have ever paid a premium on them. It's just more or less like, did the seller not kind of connect that?
No problem with
whatever, right? Capitalist market here, So, right. But yeah, right. that's another cool shiny card in hand.
Right.
Die cut. Those corners are actually a little bit more rounded on the die cut too on that card.
That helps, right? So it helps from getting a little extra damage on there. I would think that it would actually protect it in a way.
And for you people out there trying to find one, don't be discouraged by it looking like it's a rounded corner, because it was supposed to be like that.
Yeah, very good point. Well, so you're right. And thank you for reminding me that a Black Diamond. I'm so stuck on Black Diamond being a 1-pack, 6 cards per pack product with these, really 150-point cardstock cards and really fun and die cut inserts and things like that. But a lot of, just kind of fluff. And these were obviously like 24 packs per box, and you had all these different tiers with levels of diamonds, and so it must have been a really fun product to open. But this is another one I got to move on to because I'm seeing it. And Epics is a really big popular set, baseball collectors, and so for hockey, these are also available. You know, there's multiple levels of them, right? You had the game, you had the moment, you had the all-star, and the season. Did I get them all?
Yeah, yeah. There's 4 of them. Yeah,
right. And there's obviously the moment being the toughest in both sports. So, you know, obviously argued print runs of 30 for the emeralds and 60 for the purples and so forth. But regardless, these are some of them. Even if it's the orange, these are some of the most spectacular looking cards in hand that you can get on a budget, unless you're going for the moment, right? So I think it's great that you added that one in here. Do you feel like the moment is a better card for any other reason other than its rarity?
Well, for the beret collectors, they like him because he's in the flying skate jersey.
Okay.
Another small little minor detail, but again, only for the beret guys, is he's using a bush stick. He rarely had a picture of him using that stick.
I love that.
Game used equipment, so they try to get the cards that they're using the sticks in the pictures, you know. But I'll tell you, I bought that card years ago. I don't even remember. And I have been looking for the orange and the green ever since then, and they never pop up until recently. We saw a couple sell on eBay, and they probably were listed for a total of maybe 5-10 minutes before they were bought and sold. You know, it's unbelievable. But the moments, we were trying to figure out what particular Pinnacle brand that the moments came out of, but they were very difficult. I think it was certified. But they were really, really, really tough. And particular players, it seems like there's less of.
Well, it's really interesting because, again, I'm still learning about the 90s hockey. Jocelyn Thibault was not in a lot of the stuff, so I didn't take the deep dives to learn about it like I am now. But I will say that in baseball, they were sprinkled in all these different Pinnacle sets in 98. And Pinnacle was going out of business, right? So they had to get them all out there in these random products, kind of like baseball did with the Crusades, right? They kind of put those in different products as like a chase hit. And so I'm guessing in 90s hockey with these, they also kind of sprinkled them in like, you know, flagship Pinnacle, and then you put them in certified and totally certified. Like they were probably sprinkled in all those different sets. And so again, that adds just another level of complexity and difficult to trying to find them, you know, and that's what made, I can't imagine all these cards we've gone through, finding your player, you know, at a card shop, at a card show, before eBay was really up and running, and Yahoo auctions, if anybody's old enough to remember that, you know, it would almost be impossible, right? So it's so cool to have the access that we do nowadays. But man, trying to pull one player, let alone your player, of just about any of these we've talked about, it really makes you appreciate them a little bit more. I know it does for you, and it certainly does for me too.
You know? I learned at a young age that I was better off saving my money and going after the card that I wanted than going and trying to pull them.
Yeah.
I did pull a few cool. I mean, I did like breaking every once in a while, but majority of the money that I saved up, I had to save it up for beret. It was too expensive as a kid. So, you know, it helped me budget, learn to budget very tightly.
Right. For sure. This is a great comment here. That's obviously, this hockey guy is very well versed, and it's awesome to have an extra set of knowledge here for all these
right on the moments.
That's right. Awesome. Yeah, and you called that. You said certified, so that's perfect. Let's go through a couple of inserts that parallels that you wouldn't say classify as expensive. What's interesting to me about these next few we're going to show is they're kind of equally as difficult to find, but yet their market is set so much lower. So it's almost more of like just the patience that's part of it, rather than like patience and budgeting to try to get a copy. First one that comes to mind is from Summit. Summit for me will always be such a fun set. Even the base cards looked amazing. Like when I was still collecting in the 90s as a kid, and I had my goalie cards, I mean, Summits looked so great. They were on a little bit thicker stock, right? They were very crisp. And then the parallels look incredible. So this is the gold artist proof. And obviously I think actually we do have a print run on these, don't we? Isn't it like 560 or something like that?
Yeah, you would know more than I. That's amazing if there is. I've never seen it.
Well, I think what they did, Doug, is they released somehow the info for how many cases of Summit that was produced was released. Now, I could be wrong here. I could be thinking about something else, but something's telling me that we got that information. So then they mapped that out with the odds. I think you got 1 per 2 boxes, or 1 per box. I can't remember. So then they were able to kind of figure out just how many there were. But I believe the print run is under 600, and that should be in like the Beckett Almanac, the real fat boy, the thick boy. Yeah, the Bible of hockey collecting.
Well, it would make sense because the Z team, the 95-96 Z team was, I think, 95-96, right? Yeah, 95-96 Z team. The other one.
Oh, the other one. This one right here. This guy.
Those were, I think they said the print run was 400 on those. So most of rare 90s Pinnacle was probably close to about that. So you're probably about right with the Summit card. But I'll tell you, they don't show up very often at all. They're really tough to find. But you got the silver version too, which you can get still for probably about $40. But they're beautiful cards. I agree with you.
And it goes right in line with the mirror golds from 95-96. I mean, just gorgeous cards. The etching, like the foiling with the name of the set and the name of the player. Nice big borderless photo. I mean, it's crazy to think, like, if you were to tell somebody this is a $300 card, they could probably believe you just based on the looks alone, right? But I feel like, do you feel like these kind of fit into that big enough set? A lot of great players in the set, fantastic looking card, like one that people should maybe look for as one of their first purchases, because I feel like visually it just ticks all the boxes, man.
Yeah, the other thing too, it's the original OG gold, mirror gold. So it's the very first year they ever did those. And they were low odds to pull them out of that product, but that product wasn't cheap. And I don't think that they had like a full 24 packs per box either. It was one of the very first like real premium products that they came out with. But they're a little thicker stock. They usually will probably grade well. I like the peel on mine. They have you can see there's a little peel coating on there.
Yeah, right here. Yeah.
But there's so many good players in that set too. It's a beautiful set. I agree with you. I'm glad you like them, and they will definitely fit within a budget.
Right. No, I was definitely one that I couldn't believe when I saw the picture of Tebow and how awesome it was, and then saw the price. I was doing a ComC order, the big old, just like added all up. It's like, this is $3 or whatever it was for Tebow. I couldn't believe it. So that was amazing. And I'm glad you talked about the Z team. These are pretty well known amongst the baseball community and the hockey community. I think football has these. I don't know if basketball has these or not. You have to forgive me if it does, and I don't know. But they went from that to this the following year with a little bit of acetate and some foil. I feel like these are definitely not as appreciated as these, because these were the OG Z teams. But I feel like these offer just as much design-wise as these do, right? You go from Dufex to acetate and some like
the only knock on the 96-97 one is because they were acetate back in the day. A lot of them have damage, or that the print didn't come out exact, or over time they started to get that weird like filmy stuff on them. So it's harder to find one in really pristine condition.
Gotcha.
Probably not a gradable card.
We're talking to a guy who would prefer all of his cards to be raw. I have very good graded cards, so it doesn't bother me. I think you're kind of in the same line there. Well, another set, I mean, we're moving right along here. Another set that a lot of baseball collectors love, but hockey collectors love too, is gold label, right? The red labels are such a fun parallel. The red is super bold. You've got your different levels, this one being out of 100. But they're actually,
that one's numbered out of 25.
Well, this one right here. Okay, thank you. It's back before the front. But so this, obviously, being the prime gold red label, this is an insert set that also has the red label, but they're just so vibrant. Like the gold label, even just a regular 50-cent base card of your favorite player in gold label, that would be a parallel or an insert nowadays. Like, they're just so gorgeous. They were 3 cards per pack. I think there was 24 packs per box. Even the packaging was incredible back in the day, if anybody opened them. But where does this fall in line for you visually, like on a scale of 1 to 10? Every time you look at your gold label cards, these have to be right up there with some of the best looking cards in your collection, right?
Yeah, gold label is another set that was pretty difficult for us to get a lot of. So the number to 100 ones are actually pretty tough to find. I just missed out on one of them that I was trying to get on eBay. MC Sports Cards has been listing a bunch of Beret stuff. So that number to 25 one that you were showing, there is one up right now, up for auction. So we'll see how it does. But they are extremely shiny. I can't even get a quality picture with my phone to get the quality of the card in hand, the same visual. Right. So they're thicker. Also, like you said, they came in smaller quantities per pack, but it was Topps attempt to put their most quality, like every card is a refractor. Yep. Even the commons are refractors, but they're beautiful cards. They're crazy. Unique. Yeah. So
yeah, you can't go wrong. I mean, if you're starting a 90s hockey collection, take a look at Gold Label. That's a great place to start. I actually was like, I want to get a couple goalies to just kind of look at. And I found a beautiful Biron, RT Biron out of 25, the prime gold. And it was like $10. I was like, this is the easiest $10 I've ever spent. It was 25, different card. But still, I mean, for that price or how rare and beautiful that card is, you can't go wrong there at all.
Yeah.
I do want to go. We talked a little bit about Be a Player.
Yeah.
Pinnacle Be a Player. If I'm correct, is this the set you were referring to where it was one autograph per pack?
I don't know if it's one autograph per pack. It might have been on this one too, but the first year, this is not the first year that they did it. Upper Deck was the first year, I think. I could be wrong. I don't know. But this is the refractor of that one. That's actually a very difficult card to find. But yeah, it's the very first year that Bure had an autograph in packs.
Nice. Okay.
So, but they usually, like, if you like Bure and you want an autograph, a hard signed autograph, and he's also signed it with number 96. Now, there's not another card on the market in packs that he signed with 96.
Interesting.
Okay? So if you want a rare card, it's not the most awesome autograph because they put a hard, like shiny lacquer on it, and they had him sign on it, and the ink didn't hold as well. Right. But you can pick them up for, $50, under $100 for sure.
Nice.
And so there's not a lot of Bure autographs you can pick up for under $100 anymore. So.
Right. Well, and that's really nice to know for a lot of collectors out there because it was a huge set. I've seen, he's one of the only breakers I mentioned on here. If you guys want to watch awesome hockey breaks, Fulton cards, he breaks 90s boxes, he breaks mid 2000s, he breaks modern, ultra modern. Awesome guy. And he's opened a few of these boxes and just seeing some of the names that come out, which he knows almost everybody, which is crazy, but to pull like a decent player in this product was really, really tricky. And then they did it the year after the next Pinnacle Be a Player. Those are even more beautiful. But you had some cards on here with like guys like Curtis Joseph's playing golf, Bill Ranford's playing pool. It's so funny. Like, it's such unique looking cards. And then, you got this other, this is also Be a Player.
Yes, this is licensed also though. So both those years you showed, the 90s Be a Player was just as sought as some of the Upper Deck stuff and Topps and all that. So people need to remember these are very few sets that we had patch cards. So these were very difficult. These were 1 out of 999 packs. Every one of the cards out of that set were, but it's just iconic. It's not the most gorgeous design, I would probably say, but some people would argue that. But I think that the iconic history part of the set of Be a Player and all the early Be a Players, especially Bure and Canucks, because most of it became Florida Panthers and New York Rangers. So he doesn't have a lot of Canucks stuff. So there's, it's going to be like subject to the player probably too and what you're looking for. But the patches are the key. You can't find any other cards out there in the 90s like that with patches. So
that's awesome, dude. Yeah. So they're the OGs. Well, speaking of iconic cards, we're going to do 2 more. I got to show this one. Greg on this podcast was able to track down his Tim Salmon of the Prime Choice Reserve. They were very, very tough cards to pull, let alone the fact that this product was very cheap. So a lot of kids opened it, and a lot of kids might have pulled these rare cards out of 100 and not known it. We've covered them many, many times on this show, but I have to show that hockey has an equivalent for them. So prime choice reserves are up there on some of the trickiest to find of any player. But I have to end this slideshow, this presentation, with arguably the most beautiful card that's ever been created in the 90s.
Where's your Tebow?
He's tucked away in the closet back there, actually. I know.
Any light damage on it.
Yeah, right. No, and it still has the peel. It's the only card I've kept the peel on. Got to give a shout out to Billy Houseman, House of Cards on Instagram. I sold it to him. I was going after Star Wars cards and all this stuff. And then about 3 or 4 months ago, I'm like, man, I really missed this card. I feel like I want it back. It's like, I'll sell it back to you for what you paid. And so once I moved down here, I paid for it and got it. So I'm so happy to have it back in the collection. But yeah, Doug, tell us a little bit about this card, what it's called, and really where does it sit on the upper echelon of 90s cards for player collectors?
Me personally, it's number one. Now I got a story behind it because I just got it last year, and it's been number one on my list since high school. So I've had so many of them fall between the cracks or fall through my hands in deals, or I get teased and dragged along for a year, and then the guy decides to not sell it or puts it so far out of budget that I can't touch it. Right. So my shout out to Frank Porco for allowing me to finally buy this one, especially with the peel. I didn't want one graded. I wanted it raw, just like they came in the redemption. These are redemption cards, though, so you had to pull the platinum golds out of Pinnacle totally certified. Totally certified was pretty expensive product. The other thing, me personally, I didn't like opening it because a lot of the cards kind of look the same, just like SPX was a little bit. But you know how the grand finales are so pricey, right? It's the same with the golds. The golds are numbered to 69 for the players, and I think it's like 59 for the goalies, maybe.
Correct.
Okay. And then so you had to pull one, and if you pulled whatever player it was, you could send it in Pinnacle, right, when they were still in business for a period of time to be the first of the 30 people to send it in to get the redemption of this. So to get one of these was very difficult. Plus, they kept the gold also, but we found out that they got rid of them or they sold them when they did that big auction when they went out of business or something, right?
Okay, good.
So I think they're all in circulation, but there's only 30 of these, and I think 25 of the goalies, right?
Yeah, the goalies are even less. It's crazy.
Yeah, but when you put them in the light, I mean, like even with the peel on, they are unbelievable. They're the most beautiful cards ever made.
Yeah,
they really are.
Hands down.
But I mean, there's so many great 90 sets. These are starting, depending on the player you're looking for, they're getting a little out of hand on value. So if you can't afford it, if you want to get one of your favorite players out of the 90s, like you said with Tebow, something affordable that you can get, it's worthwhile just having one from this set. It will blow your mind when you put it under the sunlight.
It's hard to argue against this being the most beautiful card ever created before the year 2001. They just put everything into this, especially making a redemption card, and adds that extra layer of difficulty to it. So yeah, I think overall this is a really good start. We could keep going, and I know there's a lot of cards I've kind of skipped over, but the goal here was kind of give you some cards to look for, to start kind of digging through and see what pops up, see if there's anything that, because when you look up a certain card, some other ones are going to get suggested, right? So you're going to see all sorts of other things to go after. So this is a good starting point. And if you have any questions, obviously Doug is more knowledgeable than myself. You can hit him up on Instagram, Russian Rocket Collector 10. Doug had to make a new profile because he had some weird thing happen with the old one.
Yeah.
Which I think most all of us have tried to have been hacked or have been attempted to be hacked at least once on Instagram if you have over 1,000 followers. But yeah, he's awesome. Doug's amazing. He's an encyclopedia of 90s. He's been doing it for a long time, much longer than me and a lot of us. So yeah, he's the crafty veteran here. So hit him up for sure. But yeah, Doug, that was a lot of fun to talk about, man. And I think we'll have to get into more of a market discussion. Hopefully, get you and maybe Jimmy, Miles, and some of those guys on, and have a discussion about where the market's really sitting at now as compared to when we did our first roundtable, quite a long time ago.
I think that'd be a great discussion because it's actually a very valid point right now. I think we're actually seeing some pretty interesting stuff happen. So,
awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I appreciate anybody that wants to follow me. I'm trying to build my page back up, so I appreciate it.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of fire on that page for sure. And I think one thing that I love about most of these 90s collectors is nobody's out there, pushing their page or trying to say that they know everything. I think we're all as a community willing to help and share and share in that excitement of collecting these cards that are becoming much, much tougher to find, let alone even just start a collection, because there's so much to learn. I think there's so much unknown out there that if you don't spend the time learning about it, you end up going off and buying these cards that you think, oh yeah, this was well priced. It's like, well, no, it was kind of overpriced or whatnot. So definitely good to ask those questions. But hey, we're gonna wrap this episode of Side Credentials. I know there's a lot of you waiting for the Essential Credentials episode 100. We're just waiting for the motivation to come back in for for Greg and Alan. They're off doing family stuff and enjoying their summers. So until then, we'll do some more Side Credentials and maybe do a couple episodes of the Hockey Roundtable. I think those are well received and people like them on here. So hope you all have a great rest of your weekend. And Doug, thanks again for your time, dude.
Yeah, I look forward to more. Thanks.
Yep, you're welcome. See everybody soon.